Hi, everyone. This is Lynn Davenport, Holly Plemons, and Mary Lowe with Families Engaged for another episode of Tick Ed. This is the third of we've done a couple of videos on House Bill 1. This is the third episode. We're going to talk about virtual ed and that aspect of House Bill 1. We've long suspected that House Bill 1 is not really about vouchers and that these sessions are not really just about vouchers, that they use that as kind of political football, and then they slide in other things like virtual ed, which is embedded in this bill. Virtual ed, you'll find on page 140. This is a 177-page bill. Sorry, I've got people hammering upstairs in the noise. I apologize. And the virtual ed piece of this bill is very important to understand because technology is where a large portion of our tax dollars go in funding our schools. And the technology has not been proven successful. In fact, we have evidence that it is harmful. So why does this bill have so much about virtual education? Because the teachers are expensive. They want to replace the teachers with the technology, and the technology collects the data on the students as well as collects our tax dollars, goes into the hands of the technology giants. Autism is mentioned in this bill. Holly, do you want to talk about that piece?
Sure. On page 75, if you start on line 7, it talks about a grant program that is for autism. And one of the requirements to receive this grant is they have to put the kids on technology. And so that is at line 23. The use of technology is what it says. And so they want the data on these autistic kids. And so they're going to force the kids, if they take this government cheese, then they have to be on a device. And devices aren't good for all children, but there's a lot of autistic children that have a lot of sensory issues. And so forcing them to be on technology is going to be even more detrimental for them. Now, the parents do have an option to not accept this and not get the grant in there. But how many parents actually know the guts of what's going to happen here with putting their kids on these devices? And so I think it's just one more way that the government is overstepping and doing what they want and charading it that this is good for you when it actually is detrimental.
Well, I also believe that this is written into the bill because they know that the majority of private schools and charter schools don't accept autistic children or children with differently learning abilities. And so what this does is it allows them to take them and then literally not provide the education for them because they put them on a device. Mm. So I think that it helps them to cook the books on the other side of this, that, oh no, look, see, they are taking the autistic children. But currently, there are only 2 schools in our whole area that take any child that's differently abled. So I think this is, with the exception of the schools for dyslexia. So there are the dyslexia schools, but there's not that many of them either. So differently abled learners are not going to be accepted by the vendors that the state approves. They're not going to want to do that because they can't educate them off of $10,000 a year per student. However, they can put them on a device for $10,000 a year and have a room monitor. So this is very mischievous legislation that has been written in here, in my opinion. So, and Lynn, would you talk about, do we want to talk about virtual ed? Because it's all over the place. And, there was a news report out of Austin on a school that just has class monitors, no teachers, and all the kids are on a device. And the intonation of the student that was interviewed was eerie, like robotic. It definitely is changing the children. So would you talk about the return on the investment for virtual education that's included in this bill?
There isn't a return on the investment. And we can see over 20 years or see the span of 20 years as we brought in virtual education and technology, that it hasn't moved the needle, but it has increased the spending, the needle on the spending. If you look at the bill, virtual ed is written 114 times. So we know that this is a major portion of this bill. And I think it may be a little confusing because we're talking about education savings accounts going to children with special needs, as well as virtual education for autistic children. A lot of that's written into the bill. Some of it is for the education savings account voucher portion of the bill. The other part is for the public schools. So that may be confusing when we're talking about this.
Yes. Yeah.
So those are two different things, but there was a question asked about autism by Representative Gina Hinojosa with one of the testifiers, because that was confusing. It doesn't elaborate on what they mean by the autism piece of the bill, but that it is about, excuse me, it is about technology and autistic children. But the virtual ed piece, so we know that that when the children are on the devices and the teachers are teaching on the devices, both the teachers and the students are reduced to data points, and they use these data dashboards to understand where the kids are rather than that human to human contact. The thing that an autistic child needs the most, or a child in poverty, or a child without a decent home, is more human interaction, and that those relationships by increasing the amount of virtual learning we're doing. We saw during the pandemic that virtual learning did not work. It actually drove up the suicide ideation and the anxiety and the isolation. So they have admitted, the same lobbyists like Texas 2036, they've admitted that technology isn't good for kids and it didn't work, yet they're still pushing for more of it, and they're testifying on behalf of these bills.
So Lynn, who benefits from all of this technology? Because our children do not. So right. Who benefits? Go ahead and say who benefits.
We have donors, we have the policy think tanks. So that they're driving the bulk of this, the special interests, the charter schools even, because as mentioned in one of the previous videos we did, pre-K is a means, universal pre-K is a means to backfill the declining enrollment in the schools. Well, virtual ed is that too, because it can capture kids who aren't in the system. So say you have a homeschool family, if they can entice those families to do the virtual ed, the parents may or may not know the harm of this, but if they can get that money for virtual ed, the schools can get the money, but the parents can also get the money. So you've got that incentive dangled for both districts and parents to use the virtual education or use the dollars for virtual education. We know that's a huge issue with Texas Public Policy Foundation, Jeb Bush. They've all been pushing and ramping up, and even the TEA commissioner ramping up the digital learning and all of this does play into the metaverse and putting the kids as avatars online, which they're doing in Dallas ISD and wanting to scale this statewide.
So our good friend, Meg Backett, who's not with us today, would always say, and with the virtual education, the parents will never know what's in front of the children or what education is there, what if they are being exposed to, because it can change on the fly. And I would just submit to you that it's also not safe. Question is, why are we spending this kind of time on a voucher bill? We are, because they know that the voucher is really not as popular as the governor would like to say, and that it will destroy the schools. And so it's being talked about under the dome that they're going to remove the voucher bill from the voucher portion from this and slide it through. And we feel that it is very important for the public to understand that this bill is like a Christmas tree with all kinds of garbage hanging off of it. It is decorated up. They're going to take the tree portion, the voucher portion, possibly out, and then slide this through as if nobody knows what's in it. So it's really important that everybody know what's in it, and that that your messaging is none of the bill is good. So when you call, we do not want any of this bill.
Right.
And,
And the people who think that this is going to destroy government schools, they might be happy about that. It doesn't. It actually, what it does is it creates another lane, and actually another two lanes, because you have charter schools and public schools. It creates virtual schooling and the vouchers or the education savings accounts. So that's four lanes of taxpayer funded education. And people think, oh no, we want to collapse those traditional public schools. We want to kill them. That's not what this is actually going to do. Now it will hurt them, but it's not going to return the money back to the taxpayers as people think it will.
Okay, so let's wrap up. In the next video, let's talk about these people who want to, and literally use the word, burn it all down. Because I think it's really important that those who feel that the education system, the public schools have failed, understand what they are burning down versus what should be burned down. So, call to action here.
Call the governor.
Yeah, call the governor,
legislator,
state reps, and tell them that you do not support House Bill 1, and you do not support children as avatars learning online. That's not that doesn't do anything to solve what happens in our public schools.
And you can use the word grants or bribes. Holly says grants or bribes, and typically they are grants or bribes. So, and it's important that you call today. Thank you all for listening to TIC Ed.
Yeah, they're voting tomorrow. Thanks, y'all.